Good morning. I have to admit, this speech was not the intended speech I was going to give today. When I talked to Carl a couple weeks or so ago and said I wanted to speak today, I had something else prepared, or at least in mind. And then last Wednesday night, a tragedy happened in South Carolina, and I was moved to put these words together. I grew up in the A.M.E. church, quite literally. My grandmother, my great-grandmother, my great-aunt, who lived to be 100 and old, all were heavily involved in the A.M.E. church. Thus, us, the grandchildren, had no choice but to be heavily involved in the A.M.E. church. We grew up less than 2 blocks away from shorter A.M.E. on Richard Allen Court, a street my grandmother petitioned and campaigned to be named after the founder of the A.M.E. set. Now, living so close to that church, we spent hours and hours and hours and hours at Bible study, choir rehearsal, usher practice, and prayer meetings. Just like the one where 9 people were slaughtered last week at Emanuel A.M.E. in South Carolina. Now, as a young adult, I grew disillusioned with the church. I questioned what I perceived as a lack of engagement with its young people during the so-called gang epidemic of the early 90s. I criticized the tactics that the church used in recent social justice issues like marches and prayer vigils as antiquated. I wondered out loud how relevant the black church was to the community which it supposedly served, when right here in Denver, 3 out of 4 homeless people are black. But then I recently had a change of heart. I remembered that my personal mission of working with young black boys and saving them from themselves and from the streets and from the cemeteries and from prison would be better served if I worked with the church and the leaders there working with young people. And so recently I reached out to the leaders of Shorter A.M.E. and I offered my services, my skill set, my experiences to collaborate with their efforts and hopefully build and bridge opportunity gaps. I began to understand that the church, for all its perceived deficiencies, still meant a lot of things to a lot of communities, members and non-members, especially the A.M.E. church. Its very existence is a testimony to the convoluted relationship that exists in America, a country that was built on the backs and with the blood, sweat, and tears of an enslaved people who, for the most part, have adopted and demonstrated the declared values of its oppressors. See, in 1787, Richard Allen, he was forced to start his own church because the church that he preached at and was a member of was ironically incredibly racist to his black parishioners. So when he formed that church, he acknowledged and represented the race and the heritage of his members in their indoctrinated faith and chosen faith by putting the A in AME, which now stands for African Methodist Episcopal. See, the AME church, last week's massacre, and that's what we'll call it, massacre, again represents what the AME church represents to not only that church, not just that city, not that community, not to that state, not even to all black people, but to the nation, and what the AME church is, what black people are to the nation. That racist shooter who went in there and killed 9 people, he made a clear statement about the state of race relations in America. There was no question about who he was targeting and what he was saying when he went in there and gunned down those people. He demonstrated his white privilege in the ultimate manner. He felt not only worthy, but that he had the right to go in there and judge the value of 9 black lives. September 15th, 1963. Joyce has spoken on it before in a speech of hers, where 4 little girls were killed at the 16th Street Baptist Church. The ensuing protests, 2 black men were killed, one by the police. Does it sound familiar? It's been said that the aftermath of that bombing and the international outrage that it sparked was instrumental in changing the way that black people are perceived and the attitudes towards black people in America. 50 years later, 70 years ago, we elected our first black president. And then this term, post-racial America, started to be thrown out. And it was a phrase that came to mean that, well, because the racial divisiveness and the tension that existed 50 years ago was no longer prevalent, race wasn't an issue anymore. I think we were proved wrong last week. I'll admit, most of my life, and many times, the struggles of my parents, my grandparents, were only academic to me. I had only read about them. I had only been told about them. I never experienced or lived through Jim Crow or felt the oppression of segregation. The only time that I had ever been called nigger was by another black person. But today, I feel firsthand the anger, the confusion, the sadness, and the fear of the aftermath of an incredibly evil act motivated by racism. I fear that this isn't a one-time incident. Just a localized one-time shot. I'm concerned for my friends and family who are active in their AME churches all across the nation. And they say that's what racism is. I'm sorry, that's what terrorism is. And when you allow that terror to break your will to boldly be and boldly do who you are and what you do, then the terrorists win. And so I'll end my essay by saying this. If I have anything to do with it, if you have anything to do about it, if you have anything to do about it, the terrorists will not win. I will not break. I will stand strong in perseverance and boldly be who I am and boldly do what I am. A black man who, in the tradition of Richard Allen, will boldly teach black boys from these streets and these churches to be boldly black. To build themselves, their family, their community, their churches into unbreakable beacons of hope that stand strong and firm and never bow a knee to any racism or racism, no matter what weapon is formed against them. Because I grew up in the AME church, I am now obligated to live my life in honor of the 9 people who died in the AME church.